Let me start by officially declaring this meeting open, and welcome all of you here. This is a meeting of joint committees. The Joint Standing Committee on Defense and a Portfolio Committee on Police. Chairpersons, honorable members, ministers, and our distinguished guests, we would like to welcome you to this joint meeting between the Joint Standing Committee on Defense and the Portfolio Committee on Police. We extend our sincere appreciation to the Minister of Defense and the Minister of Police, the Acting Minister of Police, I see he hasn't yet arrived, for making time to be present today, as well as the senior leadership and officials of both the South African National Defence Force and the South African Police Service. Your presence underscores the importance of this engagement. This meeting takes place against the backdrop of the President's announcement during the 2026 State of the Nation address regarding the deployment of the South African National Defence Force in support of the South African Police Services to address persistent challenges of gangsterism and illegal mining across the country. The Joint Standing Committee on Defense has already engaged with the SANDF on this matter and has deliberated on the implication of the deployment. While the committee welcomes the intervention, the initial briefing left members with a number of outstanding questions, and it is precisely, Minister, for this reason that today's joint engagement is so important. The committee identified clear gaps in the initial preparations, particularly in relation to the level of cooperation and joint planning between the defense and the police. We therefore look forward to a more integrated and coordinated presentation that addresses the key areas such as the code of conduct governing the operation, as well as the extent of joint training and overall mission preparedness. These are not peripheral issues. They go to the heart of the operational effectiveness, accountability, and protection of civilians. The Joint Standing Committee on Defense has already considered the President's letter authorizing the deployment in line with the constitutional prescripts and its own internal processes for oversight of such deployment. However, there remains an outstanding issue concerning the gazetting of this deployment. We will appreciate clarity from the minister on this matter, particularly regarding the status and timing of publication in Government Gazette. Finally, chairpersons and the committees are acutely aware that deployment of the Defence Force in support of the police carries inherent risks. This is not a routine measure, nor it is intended to be a permanent solution. It is by design a temporary intervention. It is a stopgap to stabilize conditions and create the operational space for the police to address underlying systemic challenges. It is therefore essential that this space is utilized effectively with clear planning, coordination, and measurable outcomes to ensure that the root cause of crime are addressed in a sustainable manner. Fellow chairpersons, we look forward to a constructive and a substantive engagement today. We see this as a first step for continued joint oversight of this year-long deployment. With those few words, we have the chair of the Portfolio Committee on Police. We want to give him just a platform to say something before we carry on with our program. Honorable Cameron.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I just want to welcome the initiative that we all together here today. I think it's important, especially regarding some of the issues that you have already raised. We have quite a few questions from the Portfolio Committee side that we've previously touched on, both in a briefing just in the Portfolio Committee as well as a previous joint meeting with some of the members. I think there are questions that we'll get to the detail of later, but there has been quite a bit of confusion regarding the deployment. You would have also noted comment in the media regarding the deployment and specific red flags that were raised in Parliament that were not adhered to or even considered by any of the mentioned armed forces or security forces within South Africa. I think it's critical for us to ensure that after today the oversight measures are very, very clearly in place and that everyone knows what the role of Parliament in this is as well. There's no use in us having these discussions, but we haphazardly just continue with whatever happens outside in the public. But I will engage further later on, Chair. Welcome the initiative, and thank you for getting us all together.
Thank you, Chair. Let's welcome the Minister, the Acting Minister of Police. Minister, you're welcome.
Apologies for being a bit late.
No, there's no problem, Minister. And also, we must welcome the chairperson of the Select Committee on Security and Justice, Honorable Manani. So you are welcome, Chair. Let's go straight to our next item, which is the apologies. Secretary, can you just indicate the apologies?
Good morning to everyone. From the Joint Standing Committee on Defense, we've got apologies from Mr. Plaitjes, Mr. Hala, Mr. Kebekulu, Mr. Gereke, and also Deputy Minister Holomisa. And then from the Portfolio Committee on Police, we've got apologies from Honorable Direko, Honorable Klote, Honorable Mukwena, Honorable Muyela, Honorable Sokopo, Honorable Kola Barnard, Honorable Meshwe, and Deputy Minister Matale, and also Honorable Leanne Matthys, and Deputy Minister Pushiero as well.
Thank you, Secretary. Those are the apologies. Caution.
Apologies, Chairperson. If I may, we received an apology from Honorable Nonkonyana, Honorable Zulu, Honorable Madupi. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Caution. Let's move straight to the. There's another hand.
Yeah, the Chair is biased. Thank you, Chair. Yeah.
Honorable Skotana, yes. Sorry,
I
did not see your hand.
No. When we came in here, you welcome others you don't welcome them, but it's fine. The issue here is about the apologies, as you said. Honorable Shongwe and Honorable Mkongi as well. They've sent their apologies. And I'm not sure from the police, maybe they've already done because I came in 2 minutes later. But I don't see the National Co-Commissioner, which is a concern. In the last meeting, I know this is a joint one. But my question would be why the National Commissioner is not here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Skotana. Honorable Minister.
Chair, apologies for giving a verbal apology. I was with General Sangweni. We couldn't get him on the flight even this morning, so I thought I should just apologize because he was on his way here, but the flights are chock-a-block because of school holidays, so he couldn't get a seat. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Okay, let's proceed. Okay, General.
Thank you, Chair. National Commissioner of Police couldn't be here. It's busy with the interview process for the provincial commissioners' posts that were scheduled for this week. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All members, let's proceed. The next item will be the adoption of the agenda. Can we adopt Honorable Nihas?
Thank you, Honourable Chair, and greetings to the ministers who are here and the representatives of the SANDF and the South African Police Service and all the members. I propose that we adopt the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Nihas.
Thank you, Chairperson. I would want to second the agenda as adopted with the apologies.
We are going to request members to introduce themselves. We will want to be as fast as possible so that we start with our program. I'm going to start with members with. We've already introduced ourselves here at the podium. That's myself as Piran Pala, the co-chair of the Joint Standing Committee, and co-chair.
Thank you. I am Dr. Madusi Kigaba. I'm the co-chair of the Joint Standing Committee on Defense. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, I'm Ian Cameron. I'm the chair of the Police Portfolio Committee.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Carl Niehaus, and I'm the permanent representative for the EFF on both the Joint Standing Committee on Defence and also the Portfolio Committee on Defence and Military Veterans. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Pumlani Kubukeli. I'm the representative of MK Party on the Portfolio Committee on Defence and Military Veterans and the Joint Standing Committee on Defence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, ministers. All protocol observed. My name is Pitso Noe, member of the Joint Standing Committee on Defence, representing the African National Congress. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Hudson.
Goeiemorgen, good morning. My name is Chris Hartung, member of the Joint Standing Committee on Defence.
Thank you, Honorable Priat.
Good morning, everyone. Goeiemorgen. My name is Tammy Breed. I am from the NCOP, also a member of the Joint Standing Committee on Defence, and I am from the Free State and from the Freedom Front Plus. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Masumba.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm Honourable Siniswa Masumba. I'm just joining the Joint Standing Committee from the NCOP. I'm from the Western Cape. I'm representing the ANC.
Thank you, Honorable Manasa.
Thank you, Chair. I must start by saying that the front desk doesn't look good without number one of the NCOP. Honorable Jane Sibulete Mananiso, the chairperson of the Select Committee, Security and Justice, representing the ANC, and as well the Gauteng Whip. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Gosa.
Good morning, Chair. I'm Nicholas Gotzel. I'm a member of both the Joint Standing Committee on Defence as well as the Select Committee on Security and Justice in the NCOP. Thank you.
Honorable Skosana.
My name is David Mandlagaise Skosana. Ngibuya lapha emkhondweni wesizwe ngijamele ezespolisa ezinye eziningi ngikhula ngikhona ukuzibala ngiyakuthokoza.
Thank you. Ministers and all members who've got our support staff, I'm not going to request them to introduce themselves. I'll just go straight to the ministries, starting with the Minister of Defence.
No, thank you very much, Chair. I'm Angie Mutsecha, the Minister of Defence and Military Veterans.
Thank you, Minister of Police.
Thank you, Chair. Firoz Kacharia, Acting Minister of Police.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm Richard Mkungo, Deputy Minister of Defence and Military Veterans.
Thank you. General, let me start with you then.
Good morning again, Chair and the co-chairs. Lieutenant General Tibello Musigidi, Deputy National Commissioner responsible for policing and the chairperson of NAJOINS.
Thank you, General. General.
Good morning, Chairpersons. My name is Brigadier General Martin Khopane, Director Operations at Joint Division Operations. Thank you.
Thank you, General. General
Good morning, coaches, ministers. My name is Major General Tomialo at JOPS Division. I'm the Director Operations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jonah Hacker.
Good morning, Honourable Chair, Ministers, Deputy Minister, and Honourable Members. I'm Major General Mark Hankel. I'm from the Police Head Office and also attached to the NAT joint structures.
Thank you very much, Jonah.
Thank you. Good morning, chairs. Good morning, ministers. Good morning, all the distinguished representatives of the committees. I am Major General Giorgio, the provincial head in the Western Cape. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go straight into our business of the day, which is item 4, the joint briefing by the South African National Defence Force and the South African Police Service on the state of preparedness for the planned domestic deployment as announced during the 2026 State of the Nation address. Minister will hand over to you. You decide on who's going to present this joint plan on the preparedness of both the department and the South African Police Services. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Chair. Both departments have been meeting quite regularly, I think more than 3 times, and have produced a joint document. It initially was General Khupane was presenting it, so I'm not sure, but MCD will still stand there. So we'll ask General Khupane to present on behalf of the team.
Thank you, Minister. The chairpersons, without waste of time, this morning I shall be presenting the joint presentation by the South African National Defence Force and South African Police on the state of preparedness for the planned deployment as announced.
Sorry. Just pull the mic to yourself.
The scope as depicted on the screen shall be presented with a focus especially on the questions which were asked by the honorable members. We are trying to clarify and answer the questions which were posed previously. By way of introduction, we are saying South Africa continues to face complex organized crime threats characterized by illicit mining networks, persistent gang-related matters, extortion, firearm proliferation in the Western Cape, Eastern Cape, and Gauteng. There is links between organized crime, illegal migration, illicit firearms, corruption, and infrastructure damage. And these things, the dynamics requires extraordinary integrated state of intervention, combining the policing, intelligence, prosecution, and military support to restore stability and uphold the constitutional governance. The South African National Defence Force is therefore deployed in cooperation with the South African Police Services together with other joint the JCPS role players. The background, the honorable members, we are still saying South Africa faces converging crime threats that undermine the national security, economic stability, and public confidence across the country. The scale and persistence of these threats endangers the national security and necessitates coordinated national stabilization response as part of the whole of government. When we emphasize the whole of government, we are not delineating ourselves from departments like Department of Minerals, Department of Home Affairs, you name them. We are saying, all of us, this is a problem which requires us to face. This operation also serves to create space for the execution of the national multi-dimensional and interdepartmental organized crime combating initiatives on this cluster. Again, the interdepartmental, multidimensional, that security companies which we'd be finding operating in the space, we will have to link them up as part of the force multipliers. We are not going to negate anybody, but to bring everybody into the space. The constitutionally authorized deployment of South African National Defence Force in cooperation with the South African Police therefore constitutes a strategic intervention to enable force multiplication, territorial stabilization, and sustained disruption of criminal networks aimed at restoring the rule of law, reducing serious and violent crime, protecting national resources, and enabling long-term security and socio-economic resilience. Our purpose thereof, it says, it is to brief the responsible parliamentary committee on the state of preparedness for the planned deployment in cooperation of the South African police services. Our desired outcomes, at the end of the day, we are saying this deployment seeks measurable outcomes, including significant reduction in serious and violent crime across targeted areas, the neutralization of illicit mining and gang violence, improved community safety with the perception saying freedom from fear through visible enforcement, stabilized infrastructure, mining areas, and urban communities, and lastly, strengthened interdepartmental and multi-agency coordination. How are we going to comply on to ensure that the constitutional and legal mandate is achieved? There's going to be a periodic operational and legal compliance reports, which will be submitted through the chain of commands to the National Commissioner of Police, as well as the Chief of the South African Defence Force. This is made on a daily CTREP, which is coming from the lower levels. And we are saying members shall respect and protect the rights to dignity, life, and freedom and security of the persons, and no member shall engage in torture or cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment, arbitrary arrest or detention, and an unfair discriminatory conduct. Furthermore, when we look into the arrest, we say where authorized the arrest shall be effected strictly in accordance with the Criminal Procedure Act, Act 51 of 1977, as amended, and if the arrest is effected by an SANDF member, the suspect arrested must be handed over to the South African police without delay. And we are saying when employed, a member of the South African National Defence Force who arrests or detain any person or seizes any article or object must as soon as possible hand that person, article or object over to the police official or any other appropriate functionary designated by a relevant law. And the member who effects that arrest is legally expected to dispose an arrest statement, usually known as the A1 statement. Furthermore, we are guided by Section 19, subsection 3, sub Charlie, sub Roman figure 2 of the Defence Act, Act 42 of 2002, which provides for a strategic guidelines for the deployment. And I can confirm this document was drafted and co-signed by both the National Commissioner of Police as well as the Chief of the South African National Defence Force on the 15th of March 2026. When we look into how are we going to conduct ourselves, the South African National Defence Force mission-specific code of conduct for the Operation Prosper deployment, which is signed by the Minister of Defence, will be issued. I can confirm, Honorable, we are talking something like this, which is held by the members, and they are putting it on the pocket so that when he have got a break, he can read and recite onto this code of conduct. Furthermore, the strategic guidelines, like I said, which were signed and co-signed, as again co-signed by the Chief of the South African National Defence Force and the National Commissioner. Then within these strategic guidelines, there is what we call the rules of conduct and engagement, the use of force, proportionality of the force, the minimum force which are going to utilize. And furthermore, the South African police also have got their own code of conduct which guides their activities. How are we going to cooperate? As from the pronouncement by the President on the 12th of February, the South African police and the SANDF has been in lockstep in terms of situational assessment, planning, preparation, and the issuing of instructions or operation orders to give the effect. This has occurred, I can confirm, on national and provincial levels. And on the 18th of February, further operational and tactical planning commenced jointly at the level of the provincial commissioners and the South African National Defence Force Joint Tactical Headquarters Commanders, which is known as the Prov Joints. The working groups were established to draft the statutorily required strategic guidelines, joint operational communication plan, which was presented by both the chiefs, and the joint mission readiness training. And subsequently, a joint media briefing, which was conducted, like I said, on the 15th of March. How are we going to command and control each other? We are saying each entity shall retain its distinct command authority throughout the operation, that is, commanding its own forces. It should be noted that there are different status of command. There is something called under command, under operational command, under administrative. So those command affiliations are utilized accordingly. When we say a soldier will be commanded by a soldier, that means orders and instructions how we perform our duties and responsibility, which are a little bit different. Now, there is an operational coordination that takes place at joint operational and intelligence structure known as the net joints. And these structures are custodied from national, provincial, and local levels, giving effect through the mission area joint operational center and the tactical joint operational centers. The operation shall be coordinated and executed by both designated South African Police and South African National Defence Force commanders. On tactical or on provincial level, we find a provincial commissioner who is co-chairing together with the Joint Tactical Headquarters Commander, together with the SSA member who are on that structure. When it goes down, further it is looking that route. And the intent is to secure full cognizance, uniform interpretation, strict compliance across all deployed elements, minimizing any ambiguity, preventing operational misalignment, and reinforcing coordinated execution in support of the approved mandate. When we look onto the schematic, this is how the levels of command and control are indicated. From the tactical, that is the man on the ground who reports to the provincial going to the net joints structure, which is co-chaired by Chief SANDF together with the police commissioner, and it goes now further to the ministers. The rollout of the deployments, we know that initially in Gauteng we commenced on the 31st of January 2026, and that deployment is ending 30 April 2026 in terms of President's Minute 72/2026, which was dated for March. This initial deployment, it was when we were intervening within the Sporong area before the announcement of the SONA. And the first elements for this second deployment of the, we can say, SONA announcement, the deployment against gangsterism, illicit mining, and criminality are currently busy with necessary and required deployment drills, which includes the joint mission readiness training at various forward mounting bases. I can confirm the members have cleared into this mounting bases at Eastern Cape, Free State, Gauteng, Northwest, and Western Cape, busy with this joint mission readiness training. And this deployment, it is in terms of President Minutes 88 of 2026, dated the 11th of March. And it is authorized to primarily operate in the key areas which I mentioned, Eastern Cape, Free State, Gauteng, and Northwest and Western Cape, as well as across the country where the threat assessment informs an adjustment to the deployment. Honorable members, it should be noted, should we start pouncing and fix the destabilizer into a certain corner, and he decide to go to Mpumalanga, this employment papers allows us to operate without restructuring the document again. When we look into our joint mission readiness learning content as it was required, it is a lengthy and enjoyable one, if I can say so. The first 6 or 7 of them are mostly conducted by the South African police. Then the last ones from the RISTA. RISTA stands for Reconnaissance, Intelligence, Surveillance, Target Acquisition, Processes and Procedures, downwards. That is mainly military content. Here, honorable members, we are trying to not, we are just, can I say, refreshing our members in terms of the theory as well as practical on the ground. Then from there, when they go march forward, then they are well-oiled machines. And I can confirm this joint mission readiness training, it does not stop on this process. The members who would be on rest, they carry on with these lectures to remind. And for any other, when we see there was a problem while we were deployed, then we go implement the lessons learned and rectifications thereof. Like I said, in terms of the state of readiness, the members of all the provinces, the 5 which I mentioned, they completed what we call combat verification from the period 12 March to the 14th of March. And currently, they are now on to the joint mission readiness training. When you go to Eastern Cape, the forward mounting base would be in Grahamstown and Gqeberha. In Free State, it is within Kroonstad area. And for Gauteng, it's Doornkop. For Northwest, it's Army Support Base Poch and Phokeng SAPS facility. And in the Western Cape, it's a 9-site facility, Air Force Base, Easterplaat, and Fort Ikapa bases. That is where now the members have moved into those areas. How are we going to make sure that this deployment succeeds? The critical success factors which we envisage, we are saying actionable intelligence. And in this actionable intelligence, we are saying the capability to locate and identify these kingpins. We are not looking for a man on the ground, but we're looking for the kingpins so that we can go identify him, know him, I know where he is, I pounce onto him. And then a coordinated deployment of allocated assets, and furthermore, the comprehensive service support from the medical, your feeding of the members on the ground, the availability of adequate resources, and these resources maximized if the police or any other department has got a certain gadget which can assist in the deployment, like drones, etc., etc. We are going to integrate these resources. And lastly, rebuilding the social fabric of the communities through community outreach initiatives. Honorable members, we are from the society, and we are the sons and the daughters of this society. Therefore, when we are going to engage with the communities, we are even going to interact with them in sports facilities or any other outreach program which we are going to achieve our mission. The measures which we are put to say that we are protecting these civilians, we're gonna strictly comply with the strategic guidelines, and this joint mission readiness training, which revives or refreshes the members into how to handle certain operations, and effective command and control, and complying also to our codes of conduct. Honorable members, while I'm about to conclude, this is the picture which we see, or I depicted. It is what is now currently happening. On the left of the screen, you would see it's an exercise called foot on the ground, confirming who is available, etc., etc., and when the members are in the lecture rooms. We've got numerous pet photos to show that we are really up in for this game. This brings me to the end of the presentation. I submit, honorables.
Thank you, Brigadier General Khopane, for your high-level presentation. Members, these are the joint presentation by both the Department of Defense and the South African Police Service. I am directly going to hand over to you to engage on the presentation. As you heard the presenter saying, they were focusing on issues which we raised in our previous meetings. So let's engage the presentation. I'm going to note hands. I see you all want to say something. Let me start with Honorable Skosana, then I'll come down. Let me start with you, sir. Honorable Skosana, the platform is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Though it's first time that today I'm attending the Joint Core Committee, but I'm going to raise some concern because previously we had the Defence Force deployed here. And if I remember well, the exit plan, I'm not sure whether I'm still waiting for the exit plan, when they were exiting from these affected areas of Cape Town. My first question would be, how is the NPA integrated from the outset as we speak here, and are prosecutors embedded in planning and prioritizing the dockets, being prosecution-led? And what is the plan to target network leadership rather than merely a low-level offenders? The briefing noted, and I must ask that the DPCI explicitly emphasized the collaboration with specialized prosecutors, because sometimes these matters goes on and on. Some, they call it postponement. They postpone matters. Most of the time, matters drag on for years. Now, my question would be, what is an exit plan? What conditions must be met before South African National Defence Force withdraws? And what permanent SAPS capability must exist in that point so that the area does not simply relapse once the soldiers leave? Because sometimes you come into an area, once you leave, the same thing happens. So for me, that's a wasteful expenditure, because if there's no plan of what's going to happen at the end when you leave that area, because we are not permanently there, as you said, in other areas, at the end of April, you will be exiting, am I right? And my last one will be, SAPS previously committed to expand detectives by 4,000 and to establish an anti-gang units in all 9 provinces. How many of those additional detectives and anti-gang resources have actually been deployed into the affected areas linked to this operation? You have said in the final phase of this mission readiness, training is underway. Now the question is, if it's underway, how many South African National Defence Force members and SAPS members have completed the joint training? Over what period? On what curriculum? And have the rules of engagement and evidence handling protocols been signed off as we speak here? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Skosana. Honourable Koza.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation, General. Chairperson, I think at the outset I want to say that I'll go through the slides as they were presented, but I'd like to ask firstly, General, whether you have a register and a full disclosure of all weapons and ammunition, and whether there's an audit that has been done that will obviously also then have to be done at the end of this deployment. I don't think I have to say why I'm asking that, especially in the Western Cape. On the second slide, I think you spoke about the deployment in cooperation with SAPS, but you also referred to private security firms. Can you give us more information on that? Who are these private security firms? How did you arrive at the names or the qualifications of these private security firms? And specifically, have you filtered out those who have links to gangs, especially here in the Western Cape? Sorry, I always need to find my way around the slides. Then, if we go to slide number 7, General, through you, Chair, you spoke of the chain of command. Earlier, you again confirmed that the SANDF would be deployed in cooperation with the SAPS. But can we understand who has operational primacy on the ground in each hotspot, by rank and by function? In practice, how is this going to work? So I've read that there are 175 SAPS members that were called up for training on the 24th this week. That's where the pictures come from all of a sudden. But there will be 800 troops in the Western Cape. And I say the Western Cape, but this is just the Cape Flats. So my math isn't very good, but there are a lot more troops than there are police officers. And if we look at, for example, working in three shifts, it doesn't leave us with a lot of police officers. So if we then on that slide look at how it's going to work when there is an arrest, I think you're going to have to give us more information on exactly how this is going to work practically if you want to comply with the Criminal Procedure Act. Because the last thing we can do is to run this entire operation and not have convictions. We cannot have cases thrown out of court because there are technical glitches. So I think this slide is not entirely complete, and I would really like to know whether you have more information on that. Absolutely, we need to respect and protect the right to dignity, life and freedom, and we would assume every soldier and every police officer would do that. But unfortunately, the reality is that that does not happen. And as a member of the Select Committee on Security and Justice, I can tell you, in the Western Cape, that does not happen. There are no consequences. So what will both the the Acting Minister of Police and the Minister of Defence and yourself, General, today undertake in terms of consequence management? On Tuesday, 3 SAPS members will again appear in court after they attacked a barber in Mowbray 3 years ago. I'm told 2 of them have been simply moved to POPs. Now, POPs works with people every day. They come in confrontation with people every day. How do you move someone who has assaulted a member of the public to POPs? I think the NPA question was asked by Honourable Skosana, so I won't repeat that. On slide number 10, clarity on command and control. I've already asked for the practicality thereof. But also, how does it work when it comes to crime scene management? So, you say the intent is to secure full cognizance, uniform interpretation, and strict compliance across all deployment elements. But if you can give us some more information about how you would be managing crime scenes, specifically to ensure that there is a good flow of, and a proper flow of evidence to secure convictions. Then, General, on slide number 12, you spoke about the rollout of the deployments. The first deployment against illicit mining and criminality in Gauteng. Now, I'm now speaking as a member of the Joint Standing Committee on Defence. Again, we are still none the wiser. A letter was received on the 5th of March, backdating a deployment to the 30th of January. The people in Eldorado Park saw the army for 1 day, then they disappeared, yet you wanted 80 million rand for that deployment. What happened there? What was that? If I understand correctly, it was a continuation of Operation Prosper, which was basically only the illicit mining operation that has been running for several years now. We still don't have any answers about that.
As you conclude.
Yeah, almost done. Thank you, Chair. Joint mission readiness. So I just need to understand this as well, Chair, and I think this is very important for all of us to understand. I think it was 3 weeks or a month ago, this same committee had a joint committee with the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee and I think it was also the joint, or it was the select committee. Anyway, there was a joint committee. And in that committee, we were told by the National Commissioner that training was being conducted. This is after we had to clarify, because firstly, actually, it was said that the training had been done. So then they said it's being conducted. So now I believe that there was a call-up letter for members of the SAPS on the 24th, which was on Tuesday, and that they are now being trained until the 28th. Can you please tell us what is the story? When were those pictures taken? How long is this training going to take? Because at the time, we thought the deployment was imminent. 2 weeks ago, we were told the deployment will happen in 2 weeks. Well, it's now 2 weeks. When is this deployment going to take place? When is the training going to be concluded? And then I think the last question was... yeah, it was... it was just about Fort Ikapa and Eysterplaat, saying that all of that is ready. I would just like to know whether you will invite members of the Joint Standing Committee on Defence to come and do an oversight there to ensure that our troops who are now coming here from across the country for a year, whether they are comfortable, whether they've been prepared for, whether they will be fed, and whether they will have decent quarters to reside in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Gozel. Honourable Mananiso.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me start by welcoming the presentation. And one is pleased that it was one presentation by both parties. It really shows that you really understand the moment and the time that we are facing. Let me start where Honourable Gozel could have left. I think I just want to say it in this House that it will be important that you notify those who are deployed in those areas that members of Parliament can come for oversight anytime as they want to. Because whatever that Honourable Gozel has indicated, it's issues that at sometimes we deal with them as they go on in terms of operations. But it will be important for us to touch and feel whatever that we are given here today as a presentation. And I must say, Honourable Ministers, that with this deployment, I think all of us as communities, we have experienced the feeling, be it for the support or against, and what people have been suggesting that it needs to be done. And I'm happy that on the presentation, you were very clear that the whole of government has a responsibility. And I like it for the fact that people of Eldos were saying, okay, we appreciate the SANDF and SAPS, but where is social development? Because other people, they get scared or traumatized when these incidents are happening. So now on today, at least, there's clarity that everybody has a responsibility. So I want to urge to say that as we move swiftly with our communication in terms of trying to make people understand what is this operation all about, let us define clearly, specifically on whose role is what. Maybe on psychosocial support, we know it will be DSD, but let's get detail on who would be doing what when we will be doing these operations. The other matter, Honourable Pala, what one would want to speak on is the issue of sharing information and capacitating our local shares. We know when these operations happen, they don't want to speak to Honourable Motshega. They want the mayor to get the sense, what is your sense about what is happening on your ground? And if the mayor doesn't understand this content that we have been given, obviously he would contradict and confuse the society. So I want to say that let's go back to the strategy that we used, communication strategy that we used during COVID in terms of dealing with misinformation as well and disinformation, because we know that when such operations are happening, all of us will become political analysts. So I want to check what is the strategy that we have to respond, not be reactive on what things that will be happening. We must be getting consistent communication that these are do's and don'ts. If you are Jane and doing 1, 2, 3, these are the repercussions. Because that's how people learned the command and control during COVID. They knew that if I post that we are told not to be on the street at this time, but in other white areas, people are walking. That misinformation, we know police officers will arrest you within a certain time of period so that there are consequence management. So I just want to emphasize on that the sooner the better that we have what are do's and don'ts on the ground. I really want to appreciate the outreach program. I stay in Randfontein, opposite and directly involved with people of Siporo. Other people there, we know, besides this issue of what has happened about the Zamazama, they really understand the effect of recreational facilities and programs that are done by SANDF. And I think one would want to really applaud this integration outreach program because it will be eliminating the issue of militarization or the fear. Because people are afraid that if you have defense on the ground, then it's like you are declaring war or some other things would be done. So one would want to appreciate that, but let's get specifics as well, because we know, Honorable Moshekga, you are not equal to the task of playing games, but you can fix the pipes, you can assist with so many things. So can we just get sense as well, where there are service delivery issues that we know that you are capable of doing, will you be able to assist? On the matter of combat verification, I think I want to just say that it will be wrong of us that on those that would be deployed, you have those that still have pending cases. So I just want certainty that with this verification have went through in a sense that no one is deployed having pending matters that has to do with the legalities and operations on the ground on our previous operations that we have done, because it will befit the purpose, Honorable Pan. We know illegal mining, gangsterism, women trafficking, and other things. There's money involved there. So if you take Jane, you are not dealing with the problem. Actually, you are exacerbating the problem. But lastly, Chair, I think I want to applaud the intelligent-driven approach of these particular operations. Because if it's intelligent-driven, obviously, it's responsive. And with other matters that members are, I don't want to ask about the issue of the budget, because I fully understand that those who are conducting these operations, they have done their excessive work in terms of ensuring that this one doesn't fail, but it's equal to task, fit for purpose, and we are able to be responsive. The issue of private, lastly, security firms. We need clarity there, because we know some of these security firms are mushrooming every day, and some they don't even they are not even registered. So can we just get sense, how are you going to deal with those matters of ensuring that whoever will be on the ground on these operations are actually integrated and understand the law and order of this particular process? I thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Masumba.
Thank you, Chair. I think let me welcome the input. It's very progressive within short period of time. But I wanted to check, we do have SAPS, you do have SANDF, expecting them to arrest. But we've got challenges at justice. How are they going to close the gap between justice and correctional services? Because we really need these kingpins behind the bars. They have to have a strategy on how are they going to deal with the challenges. We know very well there are challenges, because a detective will do its work, but at the justice system, something else happened. We can see that you are going to work with all departments, including Department of Health, where some criminals, sometimes they are put in a hospital because of whatever happened in the scene. But the fact remains is that justice system and correctional services are our problem. You need to close that gap and engage them. On the other issue of the securities, you really need to screen check them very well. It's our challenge. It's where extortion comes from. If you can be very blunt about the issue. In terms of accounting to the people, I think SAPS does have policing forums. We know that SANDF will rely on SAP on this situation. But we also want you to engage the liquor board, especially the people that are dealing with the liquor shops and taverns. You need to zoom into that area because that's where other problems are coming from. And also do school programs as part of the awareness. This thing of a liquor board issuing a license to a tavern that is closer to the school, it's really creating problems, and where the drug dealers are really operating in our areas. Lastly, Chairperson, monitoring and evaluation. How is going to be done? We don't want we just need the feedback in terms of that, so that we know as the committee where we are standing. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Masumba. Honourable Priyat.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I don't know if I need to start where either one of my former colleagues here to my right have ended off with, but let me maybe start with what Honourable Mananiso did not want to ask, and that is budget. I want to know about that. Specifically, when looking at the SANDF, is there currently sufficient budget to ensure that we have defence preparedness or combat readiness, and also sufficient budget to sustain these internal deployments and commitments? And then, Chairperson, let me maybe go down my list. We've had previous deployments of SANDF with SAPS, and I want to know, have such previous deployments actually been evaluated? What gaps were identified in terms of everything? I think Honourable Godsell mentioned, who takes command and what happens then, and what will now be done differently, looking at these deployments going forward, that we can improve on that. Chairperson, leading to that, it's all good and well that we deploy the SANDF to such matters, which is one of my next questions, but what steps are being taken to actually capacitate SAPS? Because SANDF, according to my understanding, should rather be external and SAPS should be internal. So what are we doing to capacitate SAPS to be able to handle this internal pressure themselves? And then with regards to SANDF, they have become to a large extent an internal protection force now over the last few years. How will we ensure that they remain combat ready, and that we are not skewing to one side of internal protection instead of being a combat-ready force that can protect us, our borders, and in the rest of Africa? And leading to that, Chairperson, and I want to ask this question, and it might be a bit controversial, but when will we move away from the SANDF as being a high-cost stabilisation force within the country? Furthermore to that, are we looking at formalized coordination models between the SANDF and SAPS? Because even though I've just asked the previous question, it seems like this is coordination that is meant to stay for a long time. So are we going to formalize this in the manner going forward? And what indicators are we going to use to determine whether this deployment has been a success and we can exit? I know the deployment, I think the time frame is up until 30 March 2027, if I remember correctly. But that, of course, that's a date in the sand. If it handles, if we stabilize sooner or if we stabilize later, what are we going to use to determine have we been successful or not? Has DOD developed a long-term doctrine on domestic military support, because this is not actually a constitutional mandate of SANDF. So are we looking at a policy in terms of that? And then, Chairperson, my last question, and that links to what my colleague here next to me has said, and I would like to ask the ministers if they will support mandatory oversight, because in terms of deployments, we as Parliament do not necessarily do oversights. But going forward, there will need to be necessary oversight. There will need to be, Parliament will need to review this deployment, and it needs to be then on a quarterly basis or on a regular basis. So going forward, what is going to be our role as both the Joint Standing Committee on Defence, but also as the joint with PC on police and JCD? I'll leave it at that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Briet. Honourable Martin.
Thank you, Chair. This is now the second attempt to inform this committee on the state of preparedness of the SANDF for the joint for the cooperation with the SAPS. In fact, the same words appear in both presentations. The state of preparedness for the deployment in cooperation with the SAPS, verbatim, the same, exactly. But today's briefing certainly improves our understanding of how the operation is planned to unfold. But it does not improve our visibility on the actual preparedness. It's not there. It doesn't give us any indication on the readiness of this cooperation. There's no measurable standards provided, no training outcomes, no certification of units, no identification at this stage of any risks or any capability gaps that may exist. And that is what the committee asked at the previous round. So we now have a better view of the plan, but nothing about the state of preparedness or readiness for the SANDF and the SAPS to execute this plan. The briefing claims to respond to these issues that we have asked the SANDF to respond to, but in reality it does not. Again, of the 18 pages of this presentation, 14 are narrative and compliance. Only 4 pages touch on readiness. This is not what we asked the previous round, Chair, and this is a repetition of what we experienced also in the previous readiness, preparedness presentation. We ask about operational difficulties. It's not addressed. We ask about success indicators. Nothing. It's reduced to generic statements, no measurable metrics, nothing. We ask about command and control. It's been described structurally. No evidence that it was tested operationally between the SAPS and the SANDF. We ask about civilian safeguards. Now, we've got the principles in the 14 pages preceding the 4 pages on preparedness. It's listed as principles and nothing enforceable in there. This is the core issue. We ask for evidence. What we get are assurances. Now, this is certainly not what we asked for, and certainly not sufficient for a deployment of a high-risk deployment of this nature. Certainly not. So, Chair, the briefing says the operation is seamless. Everything is going very well. No indication of any challenges, no constraints, no lessons learned. It's simply unreal. So, I want to ask a direct question. At this stage, what operational difficulties have been experienced to date, and what corrective measures have been implemented? Certainly, even in the joint training that should have happened by now, it should have come out if there are problems. We previously referred to the different communication systems existing in the SANDF and the SAPS, and the past cell phone communication was utilized to address the difficulties in this. Has it been addressed? We know nothing. Coordination has repeatedly been asserted in the presentation, but nothing has been demonstrated. We don't know if joint operations has been tested. We know about the joint planning processes, but there's no evidence about this. It's only on paper. So have we had concrete joint planning outputs? Is it there? Integration exercises, interoperability tests, have it been conducted, and what were the outcomes? What are the challenges there? And then we also addressed it in the past, still not addressed. How are command and control arrangement implemented at operational level, where there are boots on the ground? Particularly where there are situations involving arrests, use of force, and whether there are conflicting instructions. How is it being addressed? Chair, then finally, what measures are in place to ensure that all deployed members are trained, certified, tested, certified, and compliant with the applicable codes of conduct that should be applicable in these circumstances? I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Hadim. Honorable Noah.
Thank you, Chairperson. Once again, one stands on the protocol established, and appreciate the presentation. And Chair, let me this time take a different approach. I will have only one question. However, Chair, before I ask that question, I just want to make the following statement, which will perhaps in one way or another refer to some of the questions that have already been asked, so that I don't become a broken record. Chair, it is my view that our country is under a terrible siege from a cancerous societal moral decay, which I think in the main or in the center is two things. It's crime and corruption. And my view is that all of us in this room, we have been entrusted to, with the responsibility to deal with these matters. We can ask questions to and fro, but until we sit like this and plan together, we will never, at most, achieve what is our mandate as legislators and the implementers of the policy. However, Chair, there is a hope that this operational plan presented to us this morning to respond to the current situation and the instruction by the President, it gives hope that from the side of the compliance as far as legislation is concerned, one feels that the two departments has done their best. And what is left for us is to make sure that we develop what will be our oversight role in terms of the implementation of the plan. And Chair, agreeing with Honorable Masumba and Honorable Briet, as far as the monitoring and evaluation is concerned, I would rather suggest that we should, from both sides, have an agreed structured feedback mechanism, which will ensure that we don't wait until it's late to intervene if we have to do so, because this is a once-off program that is responding to the challenge before us. It is important that there should be a parallel a kind of mechanism or plan, Chair, that we look beyond the 27, I mean the March 2027 when this operation comes to an end. It will not help us to wait again for another once-off operational plan. There should be a dedicated team, which all of us, we commit to it, that there should be a plan that looks beyond March next year, so that we ensure that there will be no re-emergence of undermining of law and order as far as the two identified areas are concerned. My question, Chair, is that during the Valumkoti operation, unless I did not hear or get to know that maybe the person who was arrested at one of the areas, who seems to have disappeared from the hands of the police and never appeared before court, can we perhaps get some progress? Because until today, Lieutenant Msikini, as far as I'm concerned, the gentleman is still, has not as yet been arrested. Now here we are again, we are pulling out resources, going back to the same place. If we have not been able to account for one person, what gives us hope that those people that you will arrest will ever be also face the might of the law? But I'm just citing that one, if we can get an update, Chair. I'm not necessarily saying we are going to leave them again to run away. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Kubugen.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Chair. I think I'm covered mostly by the questions from my colleagues, the other honorable members. But I do have just a few of them. Firstly, you know, I believe that the constitutional mandate that allows the president to deploy the South African National Defence Force to assist the police, if it is let to continue unabated, it becomes abused. And ourselves as parliamentarians, you know, we are supposed to guard against that, the abuse of the Constitution. Because we cannot have a situation where the SANDF is deployed on a continuous basis, you know, to help failures of the South African police services. Because what we are seeing here is, you know, are failures of the South African police services. Because the South African police service is supposed to be having a special task force or something of that sort that can deal with matters of this nature. Now to have, you know, the parliament called in to rubber stamp, you know, deployment of the SANDF time and again, you know, that is not going to assist. Because, for instance, now, I mentioned it in our last meeting as the JSCD that if we do not have a dedicated force that can do this, then we are doomed to fail as a country. You know, so, for instance, we had reservists here, the council, the Reserve Force Council, that came to present to us. And I said to them, why can't the reserve force, because we have the permanent force and we have the reserve force, why can't they be utilized for this? Okay, now the generals are here, the generals of the SANDF. You have got an army of 40,000 officers and men. Now, if I may ask, what is the army doing all these days in the camps? You know, I mean, you train for probably about 2 years, you know, that the basic training, and you are a well-equipped soldier. Then after that, what is it that the army does? Why can't we take some from the army? They are trained specifically, whether we call it a paramilitary or whatever, task force, because I understand the other task force of the SAPS is a small unit, because not everybody passes that training. But now, let's come to having a permanent solution for this, you know, because yes, you are talking about deployment. Now, we need to address that, but next year, after a year, you are going to come back here and request us to extend this deployment. I'm very much certain about that, because as we speak now, we're still talking about these troops and the South African police undergoing a training. But if you can make this permanent, you know, so let me pass from there. I think I've made my point. Now, one of my colleagues spoke about vetting. It makes us all worried, you know, because the information that we have is that many SAPS, you know, officers and, you know, the troops, they have not passed vetting. They have criminal records, you know. Now, those who are going to be deployed there, have they been vetted? You know, because we can take criminals and deploy them to guard other criminals. I mean, it's a mess. So have they undergone proper vetting, those who will be deployed there, both SAPS and SANDF, you know? Now, yeah, I think, let me end there. Thank you.
Honorable Niehaus.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and let me thank the South African National Defence Force and the South African Police Service for this joint presentation. Chair, I think the first thing we need to say is that we must accept that internal deployment is constitutionally an exceptional rather than a routine measure. And the reason why this internal deployment of the SANDF is taking place is because of the failure of the South African police force to carry out its duties, and also because of criminal infiltration into the South African police force. Chair, the presence of the acting Minister of Police, Minister Kachalia, today here is symptomatic of that fact, because otherwise we would have had the now on leave Minister Mkhunu here. So when we address these issues, it must be twofold. The one is the emergency need that exists. And we in the economic freedom fighters have accepted that there is an emergency need to deploy the South African National Defence Force, regrettably as it is, because, as I said, it is constitutionally exceptional. But secondly, it must be a process that will lead to corrective action and healing especially with regards to the South African Police Service. So, Chair, when we talk about operational work that needs to be done, one of the worst failures on the side of the South African Police Service has been a failure of intelligence. And as I've said, infiltration into the SAPS. So while Acting Minister Kachalia is here, I would like to hear from him what measures are being undertaken to improve the intelligence work of the South African Police Service, because that intelligence work is going to be the foundation on which these operations, which now include the SANDF and the South African Police Service, will be successful or not. Chair, then there is the operational issues. And yes, I hear that there is a clear commitment that there will be a distinct command authority for the South African Police Service and a distinct command authority for the South African National Defence Force. But the critical matter that needs to be addressed is how, while there's that distinct command authority, there will be a joint cooperation between the two forces in order to be successful. And this relates to issues such as arrest, search, etc. The matter of arrest has been touched on in the slides that we have received, but it has proved to be a very problematic issue when the SANDF was deployed in 2021 during the COVID problems. So we still need to talk further about what the strategical guidelines are. I understand from the slides that strategical guidelines had been agreed on and signed off. We haven't got here access to those guidelines. We would like to get access to them, even if it has to be on a confidential basis, Chair, because we want to be able to make a judgment on whether this interaction with the separate, distinct command authorities is indeed going to work, and that some of the serious legal problems that came to the fore in 2021 will not be repeated, because if they are repeated, they're going to go and impact on our ability to apprehend the criminals and successfully bring them to court, charge them, and get them eventually sentenced. Now, Chair, I also hear that we are going to have a widening of the involvement of this SANDF and police cooperation throughout the country. Because quite correctly, it is said in the presentation that criminals will not simply locate themselves in the areas that we have identified now. They can move on. But what kind of procedural processes will we go through in order to make sure that we comply with the Constitution and the law when we expand? Because we all know that deployments, as they are made by the President, are stated clearly, and they are presented in deployment letters that come to us as the Joint Standing Committee as a representative of Parliament to deal with. So how do you see those processes? Because while we understand the practicality of what you say, we must at the same time also guard against mission creep. I want to know what measurable indicators determine what and when an internal deployment has achieved its purpose and should be terminated. My colleague here expressed the fear that this can become a rollover process. We will, after this particular deployment reached its end, we will come back here and roll it over and over. Surely that should not be the situation? What indicators will trigger review, renewal, and especially termination? And of course, in all of these processes, this assessment of what happens, these practical implementations, it is very important, and some of my colleagues have referred to it already, that there must be proper oversight by this Joint Standing Committee on Defence, also the Portfolio Committee on Police, and all the other committees present here. We need parliamentary oversight. And will the two ministers agree to us that there must be not just an ad hoc agreement, some loose agreement of mandatory or periodic parliamentary review, but actually that there should be a proper mandatory periodic parliamentary review of these deployments. And then I want to direct to the Minister of Defence and Military Veterans. Can the Minister assure this committee that these domestic deployments, and we've had some experience of them already in the past, have not in effect diminished the South African National Defence Force's combat readiness? Has it? And if it has, what are those indicators? What is the evidence? If it has not, in which way does the Minister think we should deal with these deployments in order to prevent in future that it can undermine the core mandate of the SANDF? And then, is the current budget, as it has been presented to us, sufficient to sustain these deployments of the SANDF and also defence preparedness and internal commitments? I suppose what I want to say, Honourable Chairs, is that while we agree with this deployment, we would like to understand how in the short term you are making sure that it will effectively achieve the objectives that the President had set, and also the hopes that communities have expressed for these deployments. Because communities have expressed their concerns and their hopes because of their desperation, that they feel that crime is out of control and the South African Police Service is failing. Secondly, and this is where the corrective side comes, and this is specifically directed to the Acting Minister of Police. While you're going through this process of also utilizing the SANDF in this crime-fighting exercise, can you tell us how the capacity that is being provided to you by the deployment of the SANDF will assist you to continue with your own internal processes in the South African Police Service in order to correct what had gone wrong in the SANDF and which led to a situation where the SANDF had to be deployed? What had gone wrong in the SAPS and led to this deployment, so that we can be certain that we are not going to have a situation where this becomes an indefinite, continuous overhauling process of bringing the SANDF in to do internal deployments. That this is indeed, as it had been presented to us by the President, an emergency measure which will have a short timeline, a short shelf life, and then it will come to an end. Because as long as it continues, it will indicate one thing, and that is that our society is in crisis, and that the main institution that is supposed to fight crime is failing us. That is, of course, the South African Police Service. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Nias. Honourable Cameron.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I just have a few clarity-seeking questions. The first one, I want to understand what will be the weekly measures of success. I want to understand how we say success, because it mustn't be a reading of results from, for example, arrests. Arrests do not indicate success. So that's the first part. How are we going to measure success? The second part is, I noted on the call-up in SAPS, there's no indication of K9 unit playing a role. Now, purely saying that K9 unit will be deployed on an ad hoc basis, in my opinion, is not sufficient. So it's more of a comment than a question, but I think they could play a significant role. The third one is really trying to get practical clarity. Some of the members have touched it, but I want to sketch a situation to you. A soldier ends up arresting someone. I'll talk about whether they can or can't now. A soldier ends up arresting someone. A defense lawyer is appointed by the suspect that is arrested. How will that be handled? And that's how practical we need to understand the command and control issue on the ground. If a soldier is instructed, or a troop is instructed by his or her senior to arrest someone, and they do, what are the legalities around that if a SAPS member is not present? Because that soldier has no additional power whatsoever compared to a normal South African citizen. That soldier is not a peace officer, and I want to understand how that will be coordinated. Chair, and then I've got three more clarity-seeking questions. The one is, I want to understand the mechanisms. We've touched on the MPA. What mechanisms are in place to ensure successful conviction? We need to understand this, because when we get back here in a year's time, we would like to see that SAPS 6 that everyone always hesitates to talk about so much. But we need to discuss the SAPS 6 document. And then we need to see every single arrest, because that was, especially with Chanela 1, that's the massive failure in Chanela 1. We boast on arrests, but we don't see the convictions. They are at record lows. I want to understand how many additional detectives and specialized investigators of any kind have been deployed to these areas. Because if this is a visibility exercise, it's a massive waste of money. It's that simple. This needs to be targeted. In fact, I would rather say that we can have far less. We can have half the human resource capacity. But if it's specialized, it can make a far bigger impact. And then the last one, I promise, Chair, is the concrete steps in the meantime. What's being done to ensure that there's parallel work being done to ensure that we don't get to this point? So when the SANDF leaves, how do we sustain the so-called stability that we would have wanted to reach? So that's it from me now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we will start. We'll start with the officials, the Defence Force, and the SAPS. Then we'll follow up with the ministers. We'll close up with the ministers. So let me hand over to you, SANDF General. I don't know who's going to answer the question. I think you have noted all the questions. You can see the questions are quite many, and some of the questions are almost the same. But let's start with the SANDF, the official of the SANDF. Then from there we'll follow the police, and then we'll come with the minister. General.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity, and thank to the honourable members for the questions, because the questions were not necessarily located per slide. Please do allow me to speak in random. Hopefully you will get the answer as I get by. Myself and General Khopane will jointly try to answer the questions. I think the sticky one at first is the private securities. How are we going to delineate who is there, who's right, who's wrong? The issue here, our view is at local level, there are security structures that are dealing with these problems already. So from where we are standing, we cannot close those outside. But definitely, we're not going to say, you are here, come on board. We'll look at the structures, local structures, on who is honestly working on the problem, and we'll integrate those people into our security system. And that's what we're trying to say, that do we have the ability to verify who is who? I think that is a bit of a challenge. But we are saying those that are on the same side of seeking stability for the communities will be welcoming to them. Slide 7, chain of command. Sitting here, I'm trying to relate to the question, because since we've been working with the police, the common ground is coordination and joint planning. We plan together, we coordinate together, we make a plan, we go execute. But here is a standing issue. The arrest is a purview of the police. We as soldiers, we got nothing to do with that. We create conditions for police to be able to do their work. And what is different this time around, which I'm not used to, our joint planning has said the police are embedding policemen to the defense force full-time this time around. One will remember in years gone by, there was if there was an operation, we'll go to the police station and request the police to accompany us. Now, this time around is different. Police are pledged jointly to the deployment. We will be living in the same barracks and operating at the same time. So in practical terms, there are very, very few chances, if any, that a defense force member will find himself isolated. We are not saying it will not happen. We're saying this time around is different, because police are pledged jointly to sleep in the same barracks as soldiers. So in our view, I don't think it can get better than that. It's not possible, because of practical reasons, for police to command soldiers, for soldiers to command police. It's a problem. When the soldier disappeared, we treat as a wall. I don't know how a police, even as a general, how do you deal with a police that is not at work? So it's a very, very murky ground that we try and avoid. The question from the honorable member in terms of the rank and function of troops in the Western Cape, I can only talk from the Defence Force side, because that system is controlled. When a soldier is deploying, he deploys with his weapon. There is a register that is managing stores of issuing and carrying on weapons by Defence Force members. Whether the police have got a system like that, I am not sure. But if you were to go to the force that will be employed, you will find a register that is indicating what weapons, what numbers, what type of weapons that are on the ground per province where the soldiers are deployed. Consequences for action. I think I'm going to leave this one for our police colleagues, because within the Defence Force there is a clear line how we deal with misbehaviors of soldiers in relation to operation. And that is very, very clear. We have a legal team that is there to deal with those. There is a charging system which is available to the commander to effect consequence management. But I will wish to share that with the police. Slide 12, honorable members, we've been at pain trying to explain the deployment in Sporung. If the president, as an example, were to say, Defence Force, deploy in KwaZulu-Natal in August. It's not possible that you can wake up with troops on the ground in KZN prior or immediately after the president has pronounced himself. Almost, if not always, soldiers need to prepare to get to where they are supposed to. When one scrutinized its operation in Sporung, you will find that the troops were on the ground in line with the presidential meeting that was signed. There was coordination on the 10th, there was deployment, show of force in Eldorado Park. Now the question remains, what happened from January up to that deployment? Is exactly where we are. What happened the day the president announced the deployment in Western Cape? We went into a preparation mode. And that is why we are saying to this House, only in the 1st of April we'll be able to deploy, because we must develop deployment drills until to a point where we are ready to execute the operation. Now, honorable members, is exactly what happened in this situation. Much as the operation was planned for the 30th of January to the end of April, the boots on the ground were only on the ground after the presidential minute was signed, which was on the 10th. Whether you will say we must go to Limpopo in November, that will be the sequence. There is no shorter version than that. And that is our take on that one. The one honorable member on exit plan, honorable members, Skosana, I think I'll leave that one to the minister to take a bite on that. But Defence Force is a system that is commanded from the top. We follow timeline as per our leadership. And again, I have said, if there is any confusion, we were very, very upfront to say, by the 1st of May, we'll be able to execute the operations. I say again, April, 1st of April, we'll be on the ground executing operations. Again, we are not losing time. We have to fit into our combat readiness preparation, mission readiness preparation, culminating with the deployment. Again, a Defence Force, the operation in country is at the liberty of this House. I think it's open to your monitoring and your visit at your leisure. I don't think anyone that is here is prevented, only when it's coordinated, of course, so that we know where you must go to. So members of the Parliament are allowed to visit the operation. Sharing of information, it never was a problem between the police and the Defence Force, to the best of my knowledge. But it's also a fact that there was never an effort to have an interoperable system in terms of radios between the police and the Defence Force, because we are structured for different purposes. In the main, when we work together, we communicate with line-of-sight radios, commonly known as Kenwoods, and that is enough for us to speak to one another. But I do not know, I stand to be corrected, of any system within the South African police that is speaking to the Defence Force vis-a-vis. In terms of outreach programs, I think I must elaborate here a bit, honorable member. This is not funded, this is not budgeted for. This is what we do amongst community to build relations. Oftentimes, soldiers put together money to create projects within community. They will drive past a dilapidated house. During their time, they will put money together to give a house a family. When you look at Corona, you will see that there is a lot of that footprint. But to entrench ourselves within communities. We play sports with communities. We help where there are problems because we don't want to be enemies with the people that we're working with. So that's what we are talking about. Where there is a need and the skills are available within the group, for sure, we are more than willing to help. So I think this point must not be interpreted as budgeted point within the deployment. Is an initiative strictly by the soldiers. Verification purpose exists exactly for that. Within the Defence Force, the verification team consists of a legal people. Their purpose there is legal, medical, and other expertise that are there. They are there deliberately to ensure that wrong people should not find themselves within the employment or the deployment. So from the deployment, from the Defence Force side, is very clear. When we do verification, it extend to criminal record and. I think the ones relating to challenges of justice I will keep. I want to talk to budget sufficiency and insufficiency. I think it's very important for the House to understand that in terms of the Defence Force, there is one operation that is funded, internal operation, that is Corona. So whenever we are deployed, we do estimate, we present the budget of the cost. Now you will see that the problem, perhaps the model of funding the Defence Force and the model to fund the police are uniquely different. It's very, very difficult to talk into that. But we do estimates based on the requirements of the deployment, and we submit that upon the approval of the employment papers. We then request allocation. So it's going to be very difficult to say in advance, is the budget sufficient or insufficient? In terms of previous deployment with the police, I think many a times there are debriefs that we do jointly at the end of the deployment, and there are many lessons that are integrated, many of which that we have brought into this joint employment planning to prevent some of those incidents. Remaining combat ready for the Defence Force is a very important point. Remember, there is 4 elements within the Defence Force that must exist all the time. We must prepare for operations. We must train. We must develop. We must do exercises. We must send people on courses. And through exercises that we do annually, that's what gives us the nucleus of saying we are combat ready. And that is a repetitive cycle. There is no time where the Defence Force is sitting doing nothing. But here is the catch. Every mission has got its own dynamics. So you can't take generically what we have done on DRC and impose on internal operation. That requires a preparation of its own that is related to the deployment. The one, as before I conclude, say, I just want to make sure that I have covered everything that is here. Is the Defence Force trained to do internal operation? It's an emphatic no. Yes, sorry, it's an emphatic yes. Because I'll tell you why. There is a doctrine within the Defence Force that deals with deploying inside built-up areas. Is known as FIBA. And that you learn from entering the Defence Force and you grow with it. So there is no Defence Force member that does not know what happens when you are deployed in an urban area. Guaranteed. Martin, I don't know if there is a part that you will wish to take, I thought I should address that one. Thank you.
Thank you, General. On the issue of whether K9 units are deployed, my Honorable, we can confirm that we formed up structures which we are trying to say we want to engage this criminality at all fronts. And suffice to say that we have formed all these structures accordingly to engage. It's a good thing to have. It is our side pockets to utilize on the ground. If we go and give everything, honorable members, we are losing the principles of war somewhere along the line. I submit, honorable members, we are ready. I am a paratrooper, I confirm. I confirm. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Defense Force. We'll hand over to the police.
Thank you once more, Chair and honorable members. Chair, let me first and foremost thank honorable members for comments that were made, including the questions. I think they seek to put the society at ease. I think Honorable Mananiso, it's part and parcel of communicating with our society, and it's part and parcel of ensuring that we do give awareness, because I know the South Africans are watching, or they will come back and watch and listen to these responses. But over and above, Chair, Honorable Mananiso knows, I think I worked with her in December. So anytime any member who's available to join the operations are free to do so. There is nothing, we are transparent forces and will continue to do so. But that needs to be done properly and controlled, because we do have briefings before we undertake any operation, but we make sure that relevant people are at the relevant briefing, because you cannot be at the briefing that is tactical, otherwise we will be found wanting. We will not have any room to cry to as the society, because members were part and parcel of whatever challenges that will be picked up during that operation. So I just want to say, when that oversight is done at any given time, caution must be that don't be at the wrong place at the wrong time, so that we leave that room for the members of the society to have a place and space where they will go and vent if anything untoward happen. I will not repeat what my colleagues have said, but to reiterate, Chairperson, I need to emphasize that this is part and parcel of the bigger organized crime group strategy that is being developed, that is underway. Operational areas that have been identified here is the hotspots as pronounced by the President, that over and above these plans that are in place at these particular areas, there are embedded challenges that we need to look at, hence the deployment. And my colleagues have reiterated, and it's in the slides, that this is not only going to be confined to these areas. And I need to remind the House that normal operations are not going to cease because of this deployment. This deployment is focused and targeted. We do continue with our Operation Chanela, that's one. Two, we do have organized crime group strategy or plan that is going to be rolled out parallel to this plan, because the commodities or the dimensions that we are going to be addressing with this plan are the same as those that are in the bigger picture. I think we did highlight it on the introduction that this is continuation of the organized crime plan that is underway. And that also, Chairperson, will answer the issue of who is deployed, because I think question that came sharply is whether the detectives, whether the NPA, whether the DSD, or whoever on the organized crime plan. Every department, and my colleagues did reiterate and emphasize on it, Chairperson, it will continue on the ICVPS. ICVPS is integrated violent crime prevention strategy that is running parallel. So any other operations, they are not going to cease. But I need to indicate that when we were drawing these plans, it is a joint plan. It is the NAT joints plan. It is the JCPS operational plans that looked at the intelligence estimates that were presented to the team, and we look at what commodities we need to address. We convened, Chairperson, with all the department. We have drawn the plan. Each department knows what is their role. We were to sit as NAT joints yesterday for this month, but because of these other commitments, NAT joints meeting could not convene, but that is being taken care of. So deployment is across the board. NPA we have taken care of, including beyond the 12 months period that has been identified. I think Honorable Member did indicated that there is a possibility that will come back and ask for extension. We are intelligence-led operation. And if there is a need beyond the 31st of March 2027 that we need to expand, perhaps it will not be at all the areas, but we don't want to say this operation should run for 2 years or for 3 years. We want to put commitment and say, in these 12 months, what is it that can be put in place and address issues so that we can look at capacitating. I think the other issue is the capacitation of the police beyond this. Colleagues said, as and when these operations are underway, we are going to look at how police should operate. And that is part and parcel of what is in the plan to capacitate. It's a pity that we don't have students currently at the colleges, but that is the work that is underway to capacitate and have numbers of the police, because we have realized that the numbers that we are having are still not sufficient to cover the areas. The issues on slide number 7, I think the second bullet on that slide explains how the command and control will be taken forward. We talked of the prof joints, we talk of the NAT joints, and it answers as well, Chairperson of PICOP, on the last question as to the weekly measures that are going to be placed or the successes that will be measured. On a daily basis, successes will be communicated through our POCC, Provincial Operational Centers, and NAT joints on a daily basis, and will consolidate that on a weekly basis. We are doing that now with all our operations, and that is not going to stop. Again, on the very same slide, Chair, it talks to the tech jobs. That is where on an hourly basis, successes are going. There will be people that are sitting, there will be people at the MAJOC, at National Head Office, that will be facilitating and consolidating the operations that are happening, including receiving further intelligence to direct the operations if the need arises. On the consequence management, I'm not going to reiterate what General Lialo has indicated, that each of the two forces do have different mandates on dealing with the consequence management. We have the South African Police Service Disciplinary Code that is applied. I think if I can provide very sharply the statistics, I don't want to also give the wrong figures, but over time, Chairperson, I can just give briefly on what have been implemented since the financial year 2024-2025, where we have seen 4,500 cases, 4,564 cases to be specific of discipline. 2,800 of those have been finalized, which gives us 62.35% of the consequence management that we're undertaking. And I need to emphasize on the consequence management or the issues of the disciplinary cases. They go through all the processes and all the legal apparatus that we are having in the country. We do know that we have Labor Relations Act, we do have Employment Labor Relations Act, we do have the laws that governs how the department needs to deal with their employees, and that are applicable. We cannot bypass any process, otherwise we'll be sitting with the civil claims. We have received in the same financial year 796 recommendations from IPIT. 506 of those have been finalized, which gives us 63.5% or 64% to round it off. So this is just figures that I can provide of the previous financial year. Of course, as I'm saying, these cases go through all the processes, investigations, and they are processed through the legal prescripts that governs how the discipline or consequence management should be applied. Chair, there was an issue of whether the deployed members and troops will undergo vetting and the screening. The answer is yes. That has been considered, and it is continuing. It will continue. We know where there is a human element, there are issues that members will also do as they are continuing with their work. Hence, there is a command. I think these two departments are very highly monitored with other structures as well as within. We work on the command and control. We work, that is the hierarchy that you'll find in the police, that you'll find in the military. So that will still be applicable, and commanders, if they are not doing what they are supposed to be doing, they will be held accountable. But the screening of the members that are deployed, which is the process that it's much quicker than vetting, because vetting will require all rigorous processes that must be undertaken by intelligence communities to finalize the vetting. So it will take time, but the vetting happens to certain areas, such as the detectives that will be on the organized crime group, because we have seen that it is a very sensitive environment to look at. On the questions of, I'm trying to run quickly because my colleagues have covered other areas, Chairperson, but on the strategic guideline, I think the call was for this document to be made available. It is a classified document, it is available, but it is a guiding document for the operators. It defines every step that those that will be deployed should do and should not. It has the do's and don'ts, and it is signed by the chiefs, not even the chairpersons of the adjournments, but by the chiefs, so that there is that commitment. And it is for us that are on the operational side to ensure that our members do operate within the confines of this particular document. But I can reassure the committees that that document is available. As I've said, it's classified, but it is available. The indicators that inform the renewal, and I also want on this one to reiterate on the issues of intelligence collection and give comfort to the committees and the society that we have what we call operational intelligence coordination committees with every operation. And the OICC, if I can abbreviate that operational intelligence, it's made of the 3 intelligence disciplines that we are having in the country. It's crime intelligence, it's state security intelligence, it's defense intelligence. So it's not one intelligence community that we look at or we receive report. They brief with every operation, and they will continue to do so. That will indicate for us and inform how long we should go with these operations or what needs to be undertaken. But as I've said earlier, we are not intending to prolong this deployment. We want to have stability in the country. The intention of this particular operation is to make sure that we neutralize the escalating numbers of organized crime, because it is basically looking at organized crime, but we don't want to see it or it to become a permanent feature. But we know the history is coming the long way. Issues of gangs are coming the long way, and we are from time to time trying to make sure that we don't regress, Chair, and go back to the times of Pachat. The issues of arrest. Again, the guidelines, but I need to say, if we unpack section 19(3)(2). Chair, and the continuous training, I think my colleagues did not re-emphasize enough on why the need for the joint training and why training is happening. It is to make sure that we all are on the same page of this operation. We all understand what is required of us. It is been clarified on the slides that when arrest is effected by the member of SANDF, with the signing of the guideline, there are certain powers of police in terms of section 2053 that will be conferred to the members of the SANDF, hence the need for this joint training to take them through. However, on the slides, we did indicate that when such arrest happens, I think it's on slide number 7, bullet number 3, on the main bullets, arrest where authorized shall be effected strictly in accordance with the Criminal Procedure Act, and where SANDF arrests or detain any person or seize any article or object must as soon as possible hand it over to the department that is authorized and mandated to do so. That is that detective that will be having, that is that SAPS member that is being deployed together with the SANDF. When we were planning with our colleagues, the very first meeting after the pronouncement, we agreed that we are going to work on the ratio of 2:1. And we can reiterate, you may see SANDF in numbers in the training classes that were displayed here. But we all know that we have more police stations where we are going to call up members from time to time. Agreement that we had 2:1. There will be, where we deploy 25 SANDF members, provincial commissioners have been taken through. They will make sure that at least it's 50 members of the South African Police Service so that we can balance. This is civil policing. It is not a war of the country with itself. We are trying to manage the crime levels that are going high to make sure that South African Police Service works without fear or favor. I think we are all witnesses in here. I've been coming here, Chairperson. We've been communicating during Valumkoti, the type of weapons, the type of people that we have observed, that have attacked. I think this is the only country, I haven't done a comparative statistics, that you will find 22 police officers killed in a period of 3 months. That tells us the violent nature of the country that we live in, and the nature of brazenness that we're having in the criminals. Hence, we are saying, when the SANDF is protecting, the police must do their work. It is coming from that premise, Chairperson, not the failures of the police. I think the statistics and the numbers of arrests that we are communicating from time to time speaks a volume. I don't want to blow my own horn as the South African Police Service, but we are doing everything to our power. I need to indicate that the reason why I see VP as Chairperson it's because there are other underlying issues that needs to be addressed. If I can give the statistics of the deployment that we are doing on the POP members, that their secondary function is for crime prevention. They are working more on the unrests than to do that secondary function of assisting the stations with crime prevention. So it tells that there are other issues that we need to deal with as the society, so that we don't criminalize every activity and action that our members are doing. And I want to go back to the ICVPS, that is why that strategy was adopted, so that all of us can take the little piece of what we need to be doing. I think, Chairperson, I have addressed everything, but to reiterate that all units, all capacities and capabilities that we have in the police service will be called up for this particular operations. Where you don't see them in the call-up instruction is because some of the call-ups are made for the people that are moving from one area to the other, but the localized capacity and capability will be deployed, and you don't need to call them up because it is the day-to-day and it is the mandate of that particular area to deploy from time to time. I will pause here, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, General. We'll go straight to Acting Minister. We'll end up with the Minister of Defense. The Acting Minister of Police, Honorable Akash.
We had our own caucus, and the minister deployed me to come later, but it's fine.
Okay.
We are hearing before you.
No, it's fine. If you had your own caucus, then let's start with the minister, then we'll end up with you. That's fine, Minister. Can proceed, Minister.
No, thank you, Chair, because most of the matters relate to them. So I won't say much, really, because I think the officials have answered most of the questions. One question really that for me kept on coming, which I think is very helpful to say, what is the exit plan? Because it goes back to what is our objective as defense. And we've said in our documents, ours is to neutralize, so that it's not to say in the Western Cape, we're going to clear gang violence. And that's why there are clear time frames to say, indeed, to deal with gang violence, there are a number of symptoms. I mean, if you go to the Western Cape, for instance, because I've done some work there, the problems are historical, they're endemic. It's not things you can do within a year, but you can neutralize to ensure that all the other sectors that have to come in can do their work, because you can't do it as police and defense only. For instance, in the Western Cape, gangsters have become young people. It has become youth. The reason the schooling has been seriously disrupted because of gangsters, kids can't go to schools, and therefore already they get easily recruited. So it's something that you have to work with the Department of Education when you have stabilized the area to say, can we then really see if we can restore education? So the exit plan, as I say, our plan is to neutralize, not to eradicate. And the performance indicators are going to move from area to area depending on what the problems are. Some of the problems in the Western Cape are very deep, and you have to work with the provincial government. The apartheid spatial planning has created some of the problems there, where people are highly congested in a single place. There's been no development of housing. Kids grow up in very crowded homes. So you will not be able to eradicate until you have an integrated plan. So I thought I should raise it, because it's things that we have been discussing as defense to say, what is going to be our exit plan? It's going to depend on the difficulties. Perhaps in the West Rand or in Valamkoti, you close the hole and then the Zamazamas migrate. It will be a different indicator, but it means you have to chase them in the different areas where they are. So I thought I should say that. The other point which I found also useful from members, especially from Member Manai, about the role of Parliament and public, because not only will it help in terms of coordinating, because what you don't want to do from the experience is that members of Parliament say they want to come and do an oversight. you're not there. So it's as if you really don't want to cooperate, so you have not prepared. So it would be helpful to really have a coordinated, informed interaction, because it helps a lot, especially in terms of even managing public expectations. Since we went into, I get inundated by calls from committees to say, you are here, but yesterday a husband killed a wife. You have to keep on explaining to say, and which is very helpful, because people just know that you've come there to deal with violence. So gender-based violence is violence, whatever violence. So you have to really get committee leaders to understand your mission so that they can also help you communicate what the mission is, and hence this interaction is very helpful in terms of really empowering and informing committees in different areas. What is it that you want to do? The other point which members have raised, which I really also agree in terms of these outreach programs, I found them very helpful in terms of really creating trust between the defense and communities, where even young people should find it comfortable to interact with communities. And the department sometimes takes young kids on flights, and it really it softens out so they can deal with, or even touch and feel what the defense, they put them on boat rides, so which is very helpful. There have been problems where our health workers go and do cataract removals. So not only in sports, so in different areas where we can really work with communities to create that relationship, because at the end of the day, you also need communities to help you in that stabilization by giving you information and all sorts of things which you won't find on your own if there's a trust gap. So it is I find it a very helpful one. And I agree with the member from NK to say you also want to avoid the militarization of society. And that's why the time frames are quite important to say we're going in for a year to stabilize, so that you don't find yourself militarizing the country and really always dealing with hard power and not always working with people with soft power. So indeed, the Constitution allows the President to inform, not to ask for permission, to inform Cabinet about the deployment. It's within his powers, but the member is right to say we have to make sure that it's not extreme, and that's why you have to find ways of really working with communities. The last one, which I also, or the other one about operations, just to share with colleagues without necessarily sounding patronizing. I had a first-hand experience about the workings, how police, defense force, and SARS work when you go to the port. I think members, if they visit the port, they'll see that. The defense disrupts when people cross illegally. They detain them. After detaining them, they hand them over to the police to process them. And that's what you expect as an ongoing practice. If they confiscate goods, they can't allow drugs to pass and say it's not our work they interrupt the drug movement, get police to come and process that, and we still even go to SARS to really say what do they do in disposing the goods, and it works very well. So I'm saying it's a practice that is there and ongoing. So on the success, I've said that, and agree that the whole society integration, and hence I'm very happy that the committee shows an interest, because without the society understanding what we are all about, and getting public representatives being able to take the communication further, it sometimes makes it difficult, because when you are seen as strangers, people don't know what you're about, or they have assumptions about what you're about, which maybe are not the correct assumptions. We have a very strong communication team between SAPS and its defense force, but as I say, reinforced by communities themselves, it's very, very important. And this question about private security, that also has been very helpful in terms of, because they're in that space. For instance, in your border control, you find that there are private security companies which are legit, which are working in that space. You can share information and operations and makes lives, because they are they're doing that work. If you go into estates, some of the cases that have come from the police, I thought they were raised in the West Rand, it was the private security, which says we saw, they report to you. We saw these people living at night, coming very suspicious, therefore give you information. So it actually enhances your work. Yes, you have to avoid being infiltrated or just supporting the other, but because they're there in that space, at different places, it really enriches any interaction to work with them, especially those that are recognized at a format that are already doing incredible work in those committees. So I thought I should raise those, Chair, and my colleague can take over.
Thank you, Minister. Acting Minister Kachalia, you can proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks very much to all the members for your questions. They were all important, interesting, and helpful to help, I think, the members of the executive also to address important issues that you've identified. Let me just say one thing on the level of preparedness. The Minister and I have worked with our respective leaderships over the last few weeks, received several iterations of this joint plan, and I think you see evidence of that work today and the level of preparedness. The generals from the South African Defence Force and the police who have spoken today are they are the top, they are the elite structure of our law enforcement agencies in the country. These are highly experienced and competent people who have developed an operational a strategy, an operational plan. They've set up the structures that are going to be required for coordination at all three levels: strategic, operational, and tactical. And I think I can say that both of us are satisfied that the leaders of the two law enforcement agencies, SANDF and the police, have applied themselves to the challenges that we face. What is the context in which this decision has been made? The context that we face as a country, particularly when it comes to law enforcement. There are indeed multiple crises. The systemic weaknesses in law enforcement are increasingly evident to the nation, as we listen sometimes incredulously at what's emerging from the Madlanga Commission and the ad hoc committee. Some of the underlying frailties concern weaknesses in detection. The ratio of detectives to dockets. Dealing with ordinary crime, we all know that in that area we've got a lot of work to do to strengthen the investigative capabilities of the South African Police Service. In terms of crime intelligence, where chickens have come home to roost over a long period of time, it is true, Member Niehaus, that certainly I would concur with you if you say that those are capabilities that need to be developed. They have been weakened or undermined over a period of time. The challenge to integrate across the criminal justice system to ensure alignment of our NDTP and the investigative structures in the South African Police Service, when it comes to dealing with ordinary crime in the country, I'm not talking about organized crime yet, let's just be honest with each other that we are still struggling to achieve those levels of integration in the criminal justice system of joined-up government. And through these deployments of the SANDF, in the next, was it a week, a month, year, are these systemic problems going to be resolved? Is that the standard by which the committee believes this intervention should be assessed? Because the Minister of Defense is indicating what its objective is. It's a stabilization intervention, and it is time-bound. So the reset agenda for law enforcement is, in my view, at least a 10-year project. And we're interacting with the committee to understand where those challenges are and to work with the executive branch to build the capabilities in the law enforcement agencies that are going to be necessary is a long-term project. I would make the observation because I would have a slight quibble with the assessment, the highly generalized assessment that the South African Police Service is failing. Over the last 2 years, in fact, I would say with ordinary crime, the kind of crime the country has suffered with over a prolonged period of time, in fact, the evidence is clear that over the last 2 years there's been considerable improvement. But the levels of violent crime are still very high. And in some areas over the last 30 years, gender-based violence, despite our best efforts, despite what everyone will agree probably are the right policy interventions, it's very difficult to make the argument that we're seeing improvement. And really, a blame framework, a culpability framework, doesn't help address why that is the case. And the part of the problem with that assessment is that it misses what I think is the big picture here. And I'm hoping that the debate about crime in this country begins to shift. Because I believe that what we are experiencing is a significant evolution in the patterns of crime. Even as the police, NIAs, are showing some that their strategies to deal with the kind of crime we experience in our communities has improved in the last 2 years. But what we've experienced is an evolution of organized crime. And that is not simply a South African problem. What has happened is that this globalized, organized crime infiltrating key economic sectors, infiltrating, you're quite right, state institutions, particularly law enforcement institutions, taking on diverse manifestations, extortion, new kinds of drugs that are being imported in the country from Latin America, from Asia. That has caught the country, I believe, flat-footed. Our law enforcement agencies need to be supported in developing the new capabilities that are required to be effective in dealing with organized crime. I think there was an evolution over the last few years, which you don't hear it in the discussion, even here, a recognition that things have changed. I would make this point. In a way, I think we're in our FBI moment. for a long time in the United States, they would have been contented with saying ordinary policing. But given what they experienced in Chicago and New York, they realized a kind of emergence of mafia-style structures. They needed to build a new institution to deal with organized crime. It's very interesting that over the last few years, there are now that are being published are indexes to measure this intensification of globalized crime. And by the way, South Africa ranks very high. I was in Vienna last week, where the discussion in Europe is about the way organized crime is evolving there, enabled by new technologies. South Africa, I said, our crime levels have come down, but what has exploded is commercial crime, enabled by new technologies. Up 60–70%, because the new we are now introducing new technologies to modernize everything, digitalize home affairs, border control, the way departments deliver services. And that has introduced new risks for the country and new forms of crime. So if you take the reason that we now find ourselves in a situation where we have to introduce the army as a stabilization strategy is, let's take the two main problems that the President made reference to: illegal mining and gang violence. The police and the army are going to do an important job here. But dealing with gang violence, Minister Moseja is right. These are deep, structural, systemic problems that are ultimately socioeconomic. Young people as 13 years old, 12 years old, are being recruited by these gangs, increasingly, as I said, with sophisticated structures, accumulating wealth, more and more sophisticated business structures, operating across our borders. So the conversation has to be about what capabilities the South African Police Service is going to need and the country is going to need to meet this challenge, not simply to make the argument that we are failing, that the South African Police Service is incompetent. I think that in a way, I understand the despair and the anxiety that drives that narrative, but I think we need to start a new conversation. We need our own thinking about the risks that we face also has to evolve. And the conversation in Parliament and between Parliament and the executive and between our political structures and our society has to also evolve. Now, that's why we are using the deployment of the army in this particular situation for stabilization, for containment, and to create the space, as Minister Moseja was saying, to begin to build the capabilities that are required, as General Musikiri is saying, to implement an organized crime strategy. And to be clear, colleagues, we are at the very earliest stages of being able to implement such a strategy effectively. But the way this intervention is being conceptualized is to think about the deployment alongside our efforts to develop and implement a response, an effective response to organized crime. The kind of organized crime that I'm trying to introduce into the conversation. This is not, I would say, actually, we've had gang violence in this country and gangs, well, as long as I've been growing up, and I'm now in my 60s. But the gang violence we're seeing now is not that one that I grew up with. It's a new animal, and it needs new tools, new capabilities to combat. So, have we learned from experience? I think we've made our best effort to say, this is what we've done previously. What do we need to do differently and better this time? So first, there is, I think both of us are satisfied that there's been a careful planning and careful thinking by our law enforcement agencies. Second, we are saying that we are linking this with our strategy to fight organized crime. Next, we understand that this is also an opportunity to address some of these systemic problems. So we need to do better with integrating the criminal justice system. And those colleagues who are saying we want better link between investigations, arrests, and prosecutions are right. But if the assumption is that in the next year, the results in terms of that chain, that necessary chain, are going to be dramatically better than what they are today, I don't think, I cannot make that commitment today. But what I can say is that we're going to make our best effort, because the logic, the underlying the questions is absolutely correct. Those are the right issues. Next is the all-government approach, which, again, Minister Motshekga has spoken to. What we want to do, and it's always a struggle, how do we get all the departments, including those in the social cluster, aligned across levels of government? So provincial governments and the local authorities have critical roles to play. But again, that is a critical challenge. I don't believe that we are going to solve the problem of gang violence in the Western Cape unless there is a significant change in the patterns of marginalization and investment in those communities. But we can certainly reduce the levels of violence, improve the levels of safety in order to create the space for that kind of necessary investment to have better impacts. If we can rebuild a sense of trust in our communities, their sense of agency, their sense of safety, rebuild the social fabric, then this intervention will have achieved many of the objectives we have set. Then the strong emphasis on the necessary controls, the emphasis on human rights, the emphasis on constitutionalism. We can't sit here and say that all the risks of militarization, absolutely important point, and of situations where excessive force might not be used, because our soldiers are trained to use all necessary force, not proportionate force. And that's why the way we've thought about it, interacting with our law enforcement leadership, is to say, is to recognize the distinct roles and the respective mandates of this partnership. It's the police that have the frontline role for law enforcement, not the army. But we want to leverage the capabilities of our army, including those in military intelligence, because the military have advanced capabilities of surveillance, for instance, and even in the intelligence area that may help augment, supplement the capabilities of the police service. So what I'm saying and what I'm hearing from the conversation we're having is that on the paradigm, conceptually, we are all aligned. We all agree that what is being presented, this joint plan, conceptually, paradigm-wise, is the right one. The real question is about implementation. And there, the oversight role of Parliament is going to be critical. And I would be interested in a conversation about what the performance indicators, Mr. Cameron, should be for this operation. How is this committee going to exercise its oversight role in assessing whether this particular operation, which has its own particular goals and objectives, should be assessed? And the Minister and I have an important responsibility for executive oversight. And I think the two forms of critical engagement by the committee and by the two of us, because our responsibility is also an oversight one, should help create the impetus, the framework for the police and the army to understand that in a democratic society, the right way to get results is by ensuring that our public representatives are exercising their oversight responsibilities.
As you conclude, Minister?
Yes, I am. Let me leave it there. There was a question that Member Niehaus raised with me specifically about crime intelligence. Let me just say about that matter that I have a proposal which I want to put in place to set up a stakeholder council. So bring in stakeholders but also experts and support and set up, I'm talking, I don't know how many of you know Mr. Mark Shaw, but to set up an observatory to collect open source information. I wouldn't call it intelligence, but we have seen from various publications that there's an abundance of open source information that can be used to assess where the gangs are operating, what their structures are, and so forth. And I'm hoping to put those capabilities in place to carry out my responsibilities for executive oversight, and I will be very happy to be able to share the results of that kind of information with the committee. Chair, I apologize for taking up too much time, but I wanted to respond as best I could to the important questions that were asked by your committee, and also raise some matters which I think should be part of the committee's deliberations and reflection. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Really, the new conversation about crime. This is very important, Minister. And before I hand over to the chairperson of the PC on police, allow me to conclude with four briefing remarks. Firstly, these ministers and honourable members, this has been a positive and a constructive engagement.
Chair, sorry. Before you conclude, both Honourables Koskana and myself have our hands up, and I see Honourable Niels too.
Honourable members, I'm going to request that you be brief on your follow-up questions. Okay, let me start with Honourable Koskana.
I know that we are running up to 12 o'clock, am I right? And you want to close now. But in closing, because we are politicians anyway, as you said, you want to close, you wanted to quote. Let me start by quoting first. And this is directed. I'm happy of what happened and transpired here, the plans, and hopefully that it will work. What happened with COVID must not happen again. We still have the mirage of what happened there when our people were abused. Soldiers abusing powers. And some policemen and women were abusing powers. In closing, Chair, I'm going to quote as well. We are the last African country to gain freedom. and the first to hand it back to our colonizers. And let's make sure that this crime, whether it's in El Dorado Park, whether it's in Johannesburg or is in the Cape Flats, anywhere in the country, we must make sure that we don't fail our people. South Africa is a nation that won independence last, only risk it, the power, and return it back to the colonizers. We fought for many years, and our people are crying. Please, let's not fail our people. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Skotana. Honourable Koza.
Chair, I do know that there's a time limit, but I mean, we finally am now receiving a briefing with some answers, but not all of the questions have been answered. And I would just like to highlight those. The first one was my question about the private security firms. The only reference to that was by the Minister of Defence, but she was just explaining how they actually assist on the border, which you know is fine. But in the Western Cape, there is a big concern. Secondly, we raised in the Joint Standing Committee on Defence a query in our report last week that said the committee would like an explanation of how 823 million rand was earmarked for this deployment. So there was a comment to say that, in fact, I just want to read that. It was just saying that we estimate the model fund for the Defence Force is different from the police. We estimate based on the requirements of the Defence Force. That doesn't say anything. And again, on Sunday, we read 300 million rand for an armed forces day that nobody knows what it was spent on. So this committee, as the acting Minister of Police said earlier, our oversight role is important, and it's a very important point, is the oversight over that. I did read in a briefing document that that must be discussed in a closed meeting, and I don't agree with that. I don't have to say every cent, but there has to be a breakdown. And then the other thing that was not raised was that, the one thing that was raised, but is about the ratio, and that, if I understood correctly, perhaps just as on a point of clarity, is that the ratio will be 2 SAPS members for each SANDF member. And I just want clarity on that, whether that's indeed that I heard it correctly. And lastly, Chair, yes, as I conclude, I have to say that I agree with what the Acting Minister of Police said about the community's role, about the socio-economic issues that come with fighting gangsterism on the Cape Flats. I heard everything about our FBI moment and all of that. But where we are now at the moment, if we only have 3 narcotics dogs on the Cape Flats, it's not going to help. So we can talk about the FBI moments and what has to happen in the next 10 years, but there are critical resources that are not here. Those 3 narcotics dogs are only 3 now because it was an issue we drove for months, because a year ago there was only 1. So we have to focus on the basics, and I just wanted to say that because that is important at the moment on the Cape Flats.
Okay. Thank you, Honourable Gozel. Honourable Kubeki.
Thank you, Chair. You know, firstly, I just want to say the Minister, you know, the Minister of Police must not be, you know, defensive, because we are trying to help here. We've come to assist. We want to assist them in executing their executive role, you know. So you must just accept that things have fallen apart, and we are in a crisis mode. That's where we are, you know. We need to arrest the decline just as much as we need to arrest the decline in the Defence Force. So in our portfolio committee meeting, I think we said we need an indaba, or here in the JSCD we said we need an indaba on the defense, you know, to try and bring it together, the whole defense industry. But I can see that this probably needs to be expanded to, you know, to include the SAPS also, because clearly there is no plan, like I had said before. We need to have because the challenge starts at the borders. It starts at we have a coastline, a very expanded coastline that we need to close, because most of these drugs come in there, and we have an army, a big army, and a small navy, you know. So there are many challenges that we have, so we need to work all those things together. But now I had asked a question around the vetting, whether vetting has been done on those that are going to be deployed, because we will have a challenge if that has not been done. You know, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. Okay, Honorable Nihas, then from there, I'll end up with you, Honorable Noe.
Oh.
Okay, Honorable Nihas.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, there's an understanding, I think, that all of us must accept, and that is that words have a meaning. So we must be very careful to be defensive about the failure of the South African Police Service. We must acknowledge that there are major failures. And I don't think we should present to this committee and to the public who listen to this joint session of all these various committees a false impression of over success of the SAPS. It's not true. And the public, if you go out there and ask them, will tell you that it is not the case. So let's not do what Amilcar Cabral warned us against. Let's not tell lies and claim no easy victories. And I'm not saying this, General, because you specifically talked about some of the successes of the SAPS. I'm not saying it to undermine you, Minister. I'm not saying it to undermine you, because I heard the way in which you engaged with us. You wanted a proper conversation. And I'm appreciative of some of the issues that you addressed, especially the issue around intelligence. And I think you made some very constructive proposals. But at the end of the day, the devil is always in the detail. And it is about the implementation of what we want to do here. And what I was trying to ask in my original input was, how does this deployment of the SANDF start helping the South African Police Service to correct some of the failures that you are faced with? And I understand this year of deployment of the South African National Defence Force is not going to be the 1 year in which everything is corrected. All of us know the problem is much bigger. But the question was, how is it going to help you to start founding that foundation? Then for me, and I think, Chair, this is homework for all of us, as this committee together with the SANDF and with the police, is how are we going to develop a systemized process of overview of what is happening with this deployment of the SANDF. So that it's not, as I said earlier, some kind of loose-fast thing. We do a proper assessment. And that's, General, why I asked about the issue of strategical guidelines. Because at the end of the day, it's two things. It's on the ground, the operational implementation on a day-to-day basis. And my colleague referred to the issue that we don't want in that operational implementation to see some of the mistakes that were made during the COVID-19 deployment. And secondly, it's about the execution of your overall objectives and how those two things meet each other. And a significant part of that is going to be achieved through a proper implementation of the strategical guidelines. So while I appreciate that the strategical guidelines is a classified document, I think it must be used as a critical document of information for us as this committee in order to be able to do our oversight work on a structural basis. So we must agree on a structural oversight process throughout this whole period of the deployment of the SANDF, because that is our duty, to do oversight, and we have to represent the community also in order to make sure that there are no excesses and that some of the problems of the SANDF, sometimes being a force that uses force rather than restricting force, can be contained. So that's the context in which I think we should approach this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable. And yours, Honourable Noe.
Chair, I think Lieutenant omitted to respond to my one and only question. And I now want to say further on why I asked that question, Lieutenant, is because we're going back to this operation because if that guy is still on the loose, it means he's busy opening more illicit mining. Recently, and if I'm not wrong, it's where he was caught and the Zamazamas re-emerged. And this time they were worse. They chased communities out of their houses. So it therefore raises what I said earlier on, to what extent this time will give communities that this operation and beyond will give confidence that Valum Koti showed us the picture. And now we are going back, we are employing now the services of SANDF. It's clear that we want to do more. But then there must also be a track that we leave that these things will not re-emerge. But if such people who were kingpins and who disappeared in the hands of the police, this is what the colleagues are saying, it remains a question mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable. Minister, do you want to answer the?
No,
or Minister, can we start with the general? Then from there we'll end up with the general. Can you just answer the questions as members ask?
Thank you once more, Chair, and thanks again to the honourable members. On the issues of the deployment, Chairperson, I said when we were doing the planning and the briefing to the Prof Joints as well as the tech jobs, the reiteration, it's on the numbers. And I'm saying this does not take away our day-to-day operations. Perhaps the expectation will be that every time when you see an SANDF member walking, there will be members behind. That is not how operationally it will work. But we're trying to make sure that police take their responsibility as conferred upon them in the Constitution to make sure that domestically they do the work and they are assisted by the SANDF to make sure that they are safe in that state. So that is the communication, and that is what the monitoring will happen. That is why they will have to give us reports on a daily basis so that we can monitor. If it is not happening, it can be corrected. The docs, Chair, I think we came to the portfolio committee. It came from time to time, we presented. We had, at the time, the challenge of the contract management that has since been reviewed. That is why we even had a donation of the dogs, but unfortunately, out of the 42 that were donated, not all of them conformed to what is required, and we couldn't take them. You can't take a dog for the sake of taking them. You can't deploy a dog for the sake of deploying for numbers. They need to undergo the processes, training, and they must also be aligned with the duty that they must do. So we have revisited how the contract was crafted in the previous financial year and how we're going. Luckily, Minister can confirm, we had the Board of Commissioners yesterday, and one of the issues that we discussed was on the issues of the K9 and other capabilities such as scanners at the borders. Chair, on the issues of a man who disappeared. But I want to, I think what came to all the members, is the issues of our sins of the past, 2021 deployment. Hence this rigorous training that has been undertaken. And I forgot to emphasize earlier that the pictures that we see, it's not the pictures that were photoshopped. It's the reality. And it happened in the phased basis at different provinces as they were happening. I think even the Western Cape we did not show because they conclude their training today. So on the main plan, we did indicated which months are we going to do what in terms of the work breakdown structure that was developed to undertake this particular operation. So training is for the purposes of closing the gaps. I think even Honorable Brett spoke about what happened, whether we have done the gap analysis, we have reviewed what happened in the past. The modules as contained in this presentation were confined to what needs to be corrected from what we perceive will be the problem, and any other module. These are modules, it's not line one. So when we talk human rights and constitution, everything that is contained, if we are to break down what is contained on the statement taking, we will have 180 slides because it's modules that the teams are taking through. Tiger, Ntatenwe. It's one tiger. I think we also presented the number of, by the way, Operation Valumkoti is still very much in the full swing. We're still deploying on certain areas. It may not be at the same scale as we started Operation Valumkoti, but it is continuing. And I must say, when we had sufficient budget, when we started with Operation Valumkoti, it was a cluster deployment. SANDF was deployed with the police until such time that we said, there are no further funds to do the deployment, and I think we have reached the call-up because it is done with the presidential minute. If it says until this time, we can't go beyond that. But we still deploy, and it has been included in the organized crime because it's part of the organized crime plan. Those that we are still looking for tiger, that they know him. It's only one tiger that has painted the whole Valumkoti as something else, but there are many that are still going to court. We are still looking for tiger. I did indicate it in some quarters that we even engage with the Interpol. We also went to Lesotho, I think, twice with the bilaterals and other meetings that they need to assist if tiger is in Lesotho because we are still looking for him here. And re-emergence of Zamazamas, it's what we have been presenting on the displacement. What happens if we see the displacement? Hence, I think as early as yesterday, we're finalizing all the deployments that must start from the 1st of April. We're trying to rob Peter Chair to PayPal to make sure that provinces are capacitated. But we said to them, as and when they get this additional deployment from head office, because head office, it's a policy. We don't, policy creation and development, we don't have members that should work day to day, but those reserve capacities that is sitting at head office, it's all been deployed. And that again, it depends on availability of the money that we're having, because we deploy people that are staying in Gauteng to go and assist in Northwest. You'll expect that they need to get accommodation, they need to eat because they are not at their respective homes. So it depends on the department's budget to do those deployments. We're still looking for Tiger and Tateno.
Thank you. Before we give the minister, can you explain the issue of the ratio, the 2:1? General Yalo, is that 2:1?
Maybe, Chairperson, I should say I was looking at having more SAPS members that will be assisted by the SANDF. So the plan is that SAPS need to deploy and be assisted. It's the issue of if you are assisted, you can't have more of the person assisting you. You can't deposit 500, the person helping you must deposit 1,000. It's not balanced.
Thank you. Minister, I think.
No, Chair, on the budget, I must say that we did discuss it when we were looking at all the questions that were raised with us. Because initially we said we have this overall amount, then officials went into a breakdown to say how much do we give a standby allowance. I said to them, to start with allowances, deprivation allowances, it's really like talking about people's salaries as a public issue. So if the committee wants those minute details, then we can do it in a closed session. So we can give you the answer of the real breakdown. But the global breakdown, for instance, we've worked it out to say how we got there. That's why we say we're estimating that the allowances will cost us so much, goods and services will cost us so much, because even in terms of goods and services, we're estimating to say we will, based on past experience, fuel will cost us so much. It could come out next time to say it's more or less, but these are the estimates that we have in terms of goods and services. We expect more. In terms of your aircraft, we were estimating to say if we're going to use an Oryx, we may not sometimes. So again, these are estimates, but we can give you the granular figure of how we got to those states. But we just thought really it's, I think for oversight, you just need these broad allowances. And the last one, which Member Noah raised, which I also forgot to respond to, that the monitoring, it will be good, as you correctly say, 3 monthly, but what we normally do where we operate jointly, we have regular meetings with the people that we are assisting. For instance, in the Valam Code, we used to get almost monthly briefings of what is the problem, because sometimes it's not honky-donkey. So it's people who have different responsibilities working together, and in some instances, you find that there's a pressure that you want to put. I'll go back to the border. So soldiers will complain to say, we're working with SARS. The people that we've arrested, in 5 days' time, they're coming against with illicit cigarettes. So the system that they use of finding people is not deterrent. And then I can go then to the Minister of Finance to say, your fine system is wasting our time. Then we discuss it. Even with the other deployments we discuss. You'll see now when we go to Easter, I'll have to constantly talk to the Minister of Home Affairs to say, your inefficiencies of keeping people too long in the border creates a problem for us, because people are forced to really use different methods, because who's going to sleep in a border for 3 days with children? And so they're going to find ways, and it creates unnecessary burdens for us, improve. So it's not always, as I say, a perfect system, but it helps us that at the command level, even at the ministerial level, to be discussing. I used to talk frequently with Minister Senzo to say, our officials say this and this is happening, these are the threats, and try to harmonize. And that's why you need also your chiefs to be working together, because there are constant, sometimes contradictions in the different roles which you need to be negotiating throughout. So indeed, it's not like a perfect situation. Maybe we give an impression that all is honky-donkey. There are sometimes pushes and pulls in between. But because you are coordinated at the high level, you are able to resolve some of the problems. But, Chair, we can give you this breakdown in writing, confidentially, and say this is ready. But if you want to know how much we pay per liter for what, for Oryx, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you, Minister. Honourable members, I think the ministries have tried to answer our questions. Let me, before I hand over to the PC chairperson on police, allow me to conclude on with four on 4 issues. Firstly, this has been a positive and constructive engagement. The presence of both the department before a joint sitting of the committees underscores Parliament's clear intention to maintain pressure on all role players to ensure that this is a truly joint operation in planning, execution, and accountability. Secondly, we wish to emphasize that the importance of strong cooperation and strict discipline among members of both the SANDF and SAPS. The effectiveness and credibility of this deployment will depend on adherence to command structures, professional conduct, and respect for rule of law. Thirdly, we urge SAPS to fully utilize the operational space created by the SANDF deployment. This intervention must not become a substitute for policing or a permanent solution, but rather an opportunity to develop and implement more sustainable long-term solutions to crime in the affected areas. Finally, to my co-chair and Chair Cameron, I propose that we revisit this matter in the near future and consider ongoing joint oversight of the deployment throughout the year. Sustained parliamentary engagement will be essential to ensure that progress is maintained and that the objectives of the operation are achieved. I'll hand over to chair of the PC on police to conclude the meeting. Thank you. Over to you, Judge.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to all the members and all of our guests today. Closing comments. We unfortunately didn't hear the measures of success today. I think that's a critical part for me, and I know the Minister indicated that we should determine how this committee will keep the relevant entities accountable. And we will do that, but it's very difficult to do when you don't define what your goals are. How are you going to determine your own success? I can't determine that on your behalf. If I did, it might be unreasonable in terms of what expectations are from parliamentarians or civilians of what is doable. So that's a first comment. So, Chair, I think when we return, that's something that we really need to dive very deep into, is determine what are the measures of success. In terms of the question that I had earlier about the role of soldiers, I was hoping that there would be a stronger answer in terms of Section 20 of the Defence Act regarding these deployments and the role that soldiers play, because they do indeed, contrary to what I said earlier, have certain peace officer roles to play with very specific actions that they are able to take when they assist in cordoning off operations and, for example, other types of actions during these operations. I think that's another part, Chair, in terms of our reporting to the administrative and support staff as well. It's important to use that as the definition of how Parliament understands how soldiers and police members work together in complementing each other. In terms of vetting, I ran through the call-up list. In the Western Cape alone, identified a few names of cops that have serious criminal offences against them that are currently being investigated. Some are currently out on bail, from what I understand. So that needs to be reviewed before they are able to deploy. In terms of the comment regarding budget, the reason why we are finicky about budget is that SAPS alone, and we have run through it, so this isn't, I'm not saying this as criticism because we are working on it, but in the 23-24 financial year space, the fruitless and wasteful expenditure was over 492 million rand. That's why it's so critical for us to be difficult when it comes to the management of public money. I heard the Auditor General saying yesterday that over 80% of government projects are red flagged. So we have to be difficult about that. And then my last comment, Chair, to close. This shouldn't be seen as a solution. This is an exercise purely for stability. in most cases, in terms of our internal structures, especially locally, this is an indictment on quite a few of our own departments. The fact that the SANDF has to step in to assist in stabilization is not a good sign in terms of our own policing capacity. General, I know you have your hands full, we speak often, so you're in a very, very difficult situation, especially in terms of the budget, etc. But I think in the next year, we're going to go, as we're already doing, we're going to spend a lot of time to see what we can also do to assist in making sure that you do get the necessary capacity and support that you need. And then my last comment, Chair, and that's it from me then, is this process must have ruthless integrity management. The challenges that we've been seeing come up through the Madlanga Commission and the Ad hoc Committee really makes it important that if anything is picked up around ill integrity management in this process, we need to be ruthless in how we handle it. We cannot afford for this process to be sidetracked because of alleged corruption, or come back in a year's time, we'd be able to sit here and say we actually did implement the positive things and the recommendations, etc., and that we build a blueprint, God forbid, for any future deployment internally. But I think these are critical building blocks for us to build on when we come back in the near future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, honourable members, ministers, officials of our department. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. The meeting stands adjourned.